psalm of the day is Psalm 93. God is king, he's o'er us. With his power he reigns. Strength is surging through him, and the world sustains. It's established from the days of old, and it never shall be moved. From his throne he commands, our God rules. Majesty's his clothing, girded up with strength. Everlasting lordship, no end to its length. For his throne goes back to the very start. Next to him we are all fools. Built the world, built the throne, our God rules. Your testimonies are perfect, holiness adorns your palace. Everything God says goes, it always did. Each letter is reliable, not even a touch of malice. Under his great might we're all led like kids. Our God rules, the floods have lifted their voice to you. The floods have pounded a great typhoon. Our rules, but stronger still than the roar of waters. Our God on his throne, he sits up high, immune. Seas are wild and roaring, thunder strikes, waves crash. Our God rules from heaven, strong and firm, he laughs. For they can't compete with his great might. It's not even worth the duel. From his throne up on high, our God rules. Our God rules, the floods have lifted their voice to you. The floods have pounded a great typhoon, but stronger still than the roar of waters. Our God on his throne, he sits up high, immune. Our God rules, the floods have lifted their voice to you. The floods have pounded a great typhoon, but stronger still than the roars of water. Our God on his throne, he sits up high, immune. Alright, so now it's time for a Bible animal quiz. Which animal represented the years of plenty and famine in Egypt? Cows, yes. On the Day of Atonement, what type of animal was sent into the wilderness? A goat, yes. What two animals are in the story of Jonah? A big fish and a worm. What kind of animal spoke to Balaam about the angel in the road? A donkey, yes. What type of animal had 4 wings in Daniel's dream in Daniel 7? A leopard. Yes. There was a lion with wings, but he said eagle's wings. What animal alerted Peter to his betrayal of Jesus? A rooster, yes. What was the first bird that Noah sent out of the ark? Yes, a raven. What was the first animal to be featured in the plagues of Egypt? Frogs, yes. What animal did Nathan say was someone's beloved friend? A tiger, I love that. I said tiger. Sheep, yes, sheep, yes. Samson found bees making a hive in what? Yes, in a lion's mouth. Yes, what animal was given to Solomon from ships from Hiram? There's two options here. One I was looking for was a monkey. Also peacocks too, yeah. Yes.
Good evening. We're going to talk today about the patriarch of the priests, Aaron. We're into the fifth day of this festival, the sixth day of the week. We just had an animal quiz. Where we live in the central Florida, sometimes as you drive along, you come to a pasture, you can actually see cattle grazing. And once in a while, you may come across a cow who has just delivered a baby. Now she's decaffeinated. So we want to talk today about the patriarch of the priests, Aaron, and let's go into this discussion. The priesthood played a major role in the history of ancient Israel, and it was in effect foreshadowing the priesthood of Jesus Christ, and the pattern of activities in the tabernacle and in the temple pictured activities in the heavenly realm. In the book of Hebrews, for every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices. Therefore it is necessary that this one also have something to offer. For if he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the law. Jesus Christ was not a descendant of Aaron. He was a greater priest. But the priests had their role to play, who served the copy and shadow of the heavenly things, as Moses was divinely instructed. Aaron was the older brother of Moses. His name perhaps is related to the term exalted, because he was the firstborn, who served the copy and shadow of the heavenly things, as Moses was divinely instructed when he was about to make the tabernacle. For he said, see that you make all things according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. So we have Aaron as the high priest, and he is the first of them, and all through history there have been descendants of Aaron that have participated in the priesthood. Now, we have a distorted view of the Exodus account because of Hollywood. Now, I'm not, I'm not condemning them. I'm just saying the Hollywood version of the Exodus is quite distorted. Like Moses was 80 when he came back, and his older brother was 83. I'm quoting Exodus 7:7. And Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. And here you have a scene from the first Passover before they left Egypt, and you have most people think of Aaron and Moses as Charlton Heston and John Carradine. And John Carradine was chosen because of his deep voice. Aaron was very eloquent. Moses felt like he wasn't the most effective speaker, but Aaron was quite eloquent. And it's interesting about the tribe of Levi. They were rather intense and in some ways bloodthirsty. So God gave them responsibility to be around slaughtering animals. This was a way of channeling their violence into a more effective vehicle. And they also were very effective in terms of music and also in speaking. And they became, the Levitical tribe was given the responsibility of being teachers of the rest of the country, the rest of the nation. And a covenant was made with Aaron regarding the priesthood. The priesthood was always going to be descendants of Aaron. Numbers 18:19. All the heave offerings of the holy things which the children of Israel offer to the Lord, I have given to you and to your sons and daughters with you as an ordinance forever. It is a covenant of salt forever before the Lord with you and your descendants with you. There is an Aaronic covenant. And it does point to the priesthood of Jesus Christ. Seeing then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. Now let's talk about the family of Aaron. Aaron took to himself Elisheba, or in English Elizabeth. His wife was Elisheva, or Elizabeth. So that name you'll see in the priestly line. Daughter of Aminadab, who's a very prominent person. The sister of Nachshon, let's put it this way. Elisheba was the daughter of Aminadab, the sister of Nachshon, and Nachshon, the son of Aminadab, is a hero in the history, in biblical history, as wife. And she bore him Nadab, Abihu, although he did later on, he had his ups and downs, I'll put it that way, all right, as wife. And she bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Nadab and Abihu were punished, but Eleazar and Ithamar lived on, and their descendants lived on as priests. Now, let's take the family up, way up to now, hundreds of years later, to the time of Christ. And again, you see in Elizabeth. Aaron's wife was Elizabeth, and Zacharias, the father of John the Baptist, his wife was Elizabeth. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah. His wife was of the daughters of Aaron, so both the husband and the wife in this case were Aaronic, and her name was Elizabeth, and of course she gave birth to John the Baptist. Now Moses finally, from an anthropomorphic point of view, God finally got kind of impatient with him, because he kept saying, well, no, I can't really do this, I'm not a good speaker. And so he said, Moses said, oh my Lord, please send by the hand of whomever else you may send. He was trying to opt out of that job. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. And he said, is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well. And look, he is also coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he'll be glad in his heart. So he said, you've got an older brother, he's a good speaker, I'll use the two of you as a team. And this becomes the pattern in the Bible. Even before this time, there's that pattern of the two witnesses. And it's interesting that Moses took God's place in effect, and Aaron became then the spokesman. So in a way, Moses was a type of Christ. God reveals, Moses speaks, but on the other hand, Moses speaks and Moses reveals and Aaron speaks. So that makes Aaron in effect a type of the Logos, the Word. Now you shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I'll be with your mouth and with his mouth, God says, and I will teach you what you shall do. So he shall be your spokesman to the people, and he himself shall be as a mouth for you, and you shall be to him as God. This is the relationship of Moses and Aaron. And Aaron was supposed to respect Moses even though he was older. He had to respect Moses as the leader. Now, Aaron had a tremendous responsibility, which goes all through history in terms of his family. And the Bible tells us that if you have been given much, then much is expected of you. But he who did not know, yet committed things deserving of strife, shall be beaten with few. For everyone to whom much is given, from him much will be required. Aaron was given a wonderful position, high priest of the children of Israel. So obviously a high standard of behavior was required of him. For everyone to whom much is given, from him much will be required. And to whom much has been committed, of him they will ask the more. It's a very important principle in Luke 12:48. And Aaron and Moses both to some degree failed and were not able to enter the promised land. Both Moses and Aaron died east of the Jordan River and didn't enter the heartland of the promised land. And here we find the death of Aaron talked about in Numbers 20. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son and bring them up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar his son, for Aaron shall be gathered to his people and die there. Now, Stephen, speaking about the history of ancient Israel, points to a very embarrassing time. Those of us who are descendants of Aaron, read this with embarrassment, obviously. Whom our fathers would not obey, but rejected. Talking about Moses, our great-great-great-uncle, for some of us here, right? Whom our fathers would not obey, but rejected. And in their hearts they turned back to Egypt, and saying to Aaron, make us gods to go before us. For as for this Moses who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. Even though God had done all these miracles for them, they had lost faith, and now they wanted to actually go back to Egypt and work things out somehow. It's a very, of course, tragic event. But Aaron, unfortunately, succumbed to their pressure. He wilted under pressure. And they made a calf in those days, offered sacrifices to the idol, and rejoiced in the works of their own hands. Now, Aaron very likely did this as a delaying tactic, thinking Moses would eventually get back there, and if they were preoccupied with making this calf, that maybe by that time he would have gotten back. It didn't work out. They were so excited about it. They really got together and did it faster. And he thought perhaps he could worship God in this way. I'll explain more about that as we go along. In Exodus 32, I think would be the next reference. Well, first we have a depiction of that golden calf. Now, in the belief system of that region of the world, the calf or the bull was a symbol of God's throne. God would ride on the bull, and also it was symbolic of the cherub. And the cherubim were, as you know, on the Ark of the Covenant. And we see in Psalm 18, verse 10, in poetry, the beautiful poetry of Psalm 18, you also see it in 2 Samuel. And he rode upon a cherub and flew. He flew upon the wings of the wind. So in some ways, this calf represented God's throne to those people. And so Aaron was thinking that he could maybe direct the people to worship God through this means, but it didn't work out. It was a slippery slope. Once they got involved in idolatry, they began to do a lot of other things that they shouldn't have been doing in connection with this idolatry, copying the ways of ancient Egypt where they had left. So when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord." That's what he was hoping would happen, but it didn't work out that way. He did the best he could, you could say, but he did wilt under pressure. So finally, Moses comes to him, and of course Moses is extremely upset. As you know, he broke the tablets, and he comes to Aaron, and Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you that you have brought so great a sin upon them?" Now, Aaron's answer is so typical of any of us when we're caught, with let's say, our hand in the cookie jar poetically. What do you tend to do? Blame it on somebody else. Blame it on circumstances or some other person. And notice Aaron's answer. So Aaron said, "Do not let the anger of my Lord become hot. You know the people, that they are set on evil." So he blames the people. And then notice now what he says. "For they said to me, make us gods that shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. And I said to them, whoever has any gold, let them break it off. So they gave it to me, and I cast it into the fire, and this calf came out." Yeah, that's kind of a strange way to put it, isn't it? But that's human nature. When God confronted Adam, he blamed Eve. When God confronted Eve, she blamed the devil. That's the way we tend to be. Now here's a proper example of repentance in the case of David, and we had a quiz about that earlier. But first, let me just give another comment, another insight. You can take people out of Egypt, but it can be hard to take Egypt out of the people. They had been living in that culture, and it was a culture steeped in idolatry, so it was hard for them to shake it. But notice David's repentance. Does he blame anybody else? "Have mercy upon me, O God, according to your loving kindness. According to the multitude of your tender mercies, blot out my transgressions." And he goes on in the second verse. "Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin, for I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is always before me." So no cop-out, no blaming anybody else. Whatever role they had to play, he still was the one who did it, and he was repentant. And this is a proper repentance. Of course, this is the kind of repentance that we do in our lives, which leads to baptism and becoming a part of God's church. Now, in the Holy of Holies, of course, we do have, I want to say this, I have just given a rather unflattering account of Aaron, but then again, I also did one of David. So heroes do have their flaws, but Aaron remained as high priest, And he continued in that role, and his descendants continued in that role. And here you have the Ark of the Covenant. And in that Ark of the Covenant was a rod that had belonged to Aaron that miraculously had become like an almond tree. It miraculously budded with almonds and almond blossoms as a sign to all the tribes that Aaron's family are going to be the priests. And so we have in that Ark of the Covenant, once you can read about it in number 17, about the miracle and how in all the circumstances involved there. And it would be interesting if you haven't read it this year, during this year, sabbatical year, you can read it anytime. And it did establish where the priesthood was to be in the family of Aaron. And then that rod was put in the Ark of the Covenant. Hebrews 9 verse 4. Speaking about the Ark of the Covenant, the author of Hebrews says, which had the golden censer and the Ark of the Covenant overlaid on all sides with gold, in which were the golden pot that had the manna, so they had in effect a memorial of that, Aaron's rod that budded, and the tablets of the covenant, the 2 tables of stone that God restored to the people after the sin. And Moses went back up and got another set of the 10 commandments. But Aaron's rod that budded was in there. Now, Aaron is referred to later in the Bible. He remains an important person in the history of God's people. Psalm 77:20. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Psalm 99 verse 6. Moses and Aaron were among his priests, and Samuel was among those who called upon his name. They called upon the Lord, and he answered them. So Aaron was overall a man of faith and a servant of God, and a supporter of his younger brother Moses. Now faith is the substance of things, and of course his sister Miriam. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. He was a person of faith, for by it, faith, the elders obtained a good testimony, including Aaron. Here are some famous descendants of Aaron. Very likely Elijah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah, almost surely Zechariah, Ezra, Judah Maccabee, John the Baptist, Daniel Kaplan. Maybe he may not be as famous as the others. Now, in the millennial temple, after Jesus Christ returns, descendants of Aaron will continue to perform as priests. They will be from the Zadok branch of the family of Aaron. They will still be there performing priestly functions even during the millennium after Jesus Christ returns. And so Aaron remains the patriarch of the priests.
You in Him. He's my strength and shield, and I will trust in Him. Hear my cry for mercy. Hear my cry for help. We lift our hands to the place where you have made your presence known. For you are Lord. You are Lord. Yes, you are The Lord God is a refuge for His people. Save and bless those who are your own. As a shepherd carries